Hello and welcome to the first Power Speaking Live event of 2023. I'm Carrie Beckstrom, your host of this monthly series and the CEO of Power Speaking Incorporated. Today, we're going to be sharing all sorts of advice in how to communicate effectively in a hybrid environment. We all know that hybrid is here to stay, and communicating effectively in this environment is essential to driving engagement, inclusivity, alignment, productivity, and so much more. And the cost of getting it wrong can be really steep. Among other things, it can lead to siloed information, miscommunication, and a lot of frustration. And our producer, Andrew, is going to share a visual with you that comes from a Harvard Business Review article that I think does a really nice job of framing this question or this topic. Often when we think of a hybrid workplace, we think of people working in various locations, from their home, from an office, in their car, from a local coffee shop, you name it. It's more complex than that, though. It's about effectively bringing people together who are working in various locations, often spanning multiple time zones. So the focus of our conversation is really up in that right quadrant. This is about how you get communication right when communicating with people everywhere, anytime. Now, I'll note that I am going to do my best job of modeling communication best practices throughout this session. I have the task of engaging and including my virtual audience. Additionally, I need to do the same for my audience of one here in my home office, who is my cat, Walter. And he is less forgiving than the humans that are in this audience, so I have my work cut out for me. Thankfully, I am not going it alone, though. I have with me three expert panelists that I am eager to introduce you to. First of all, we have Jenny Devon. Jenny and I had the pleasure of working together for several years while I was at ADP. Jenny's career has continued to grow. She is currently the head of communication for the Transformation Office at ADP. Additionally, she leads global internal communication, which is no small feat. Jenny's audience includes over 60,000 associates in a hybrid environment, serving 1 million clients in over 140 countries. So needless to say, Jenny is going to be drawing from a wealth of experience in navigating the complexities that this type of very massive hybrid work environment entails. Also joining us is Amy Ferber. Amy Ferber is one of Power Speaking's master facilitators. She's so good that she's also responsible for helping to certify new facilitators who join Power Speaking on our various programs. In addition to the work that Amy does for Power Speaking, she works with many leaders of nonprofit organizations and helps in a virtual setting. She also teaches elementary school faculty, and students in public speaking. Last but not least, we have another Amy. This Amy is Amy Riley. Amy is also a master facilitator for Power Speaking. Additionally, she is a renowned speaker, author, and leadership development coach. Amy has over 25 years of experience working with leaders of various levels, and she also recently published her second book, The Courage of a Leader. It's a great read. And it is an international #1 bestseller. And Andrew, if we, Andrew, he's always ahead of the game. If anyone is interested in checking out Amy's book, we've shared a link in chat. Speaking of chat, I posed a question for you all at the beginning. We'd love to hear from you. And if you would, share in chat. Some of you have already done so. Thank you, Mary and Sham. Share in chat what you find most challenging about communicating in a hybrid environment. We really want for this to be interactive. So at any point, if you have a question or advice that you'd like to share, we'd love to incorporate that into the conversation. The same goes for you, Walter. If you would like to contribute, please do. All right, so let's give each of our audience members a chance to share just a little bit more about themselves. I think that always provides some nice context to the advice that you'll be sharing. So let's start with you, Jenny.
So first of all, I just want to say it's just an honor to be here with Carrie. I really enjoyed working with her at ADP. I mentioned to some colleagues that I was going to be participating on this panel, and their face lit up, as you would assume, just to be reconnecting with Carrie. And also, you don't go it alone. So although I'm here on the panel representing ADP and our team, the internal communications team is fantastic and outstanding. We're a small and mighty team, but without the team and each individual really using and leveraging their strengths, the diversity of our team, the absolute care and commitment that our team has, I wouldn't be here. I would not be able to participate. So I just want to say thank you so much to the team, and thank you, Carrie, for having me. I see a lot of frustration, and I feel the frustration that people are commenting on in the chat. The comment that I see around video fatigue, wow, no one said to me, I wish your email was longer. No one said to me, I wish the video was longer. No one's asked me for more emails about a topic. So I do feel like this panel will be very productive, Carrie, and I'm just honored to be here with you and really appreciative of anyone who's joining in.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jenny. And I do miss those cherished colleagues at ADP. So thank you for extending that. How about you, Amy Ferber?
Good morning, everyone, or good day, I should say. I've gotten in that practice in the last few years. I love learning and I love teaching. And so at the beginning of the pandemic, when we all jumped into the deep end of Zoom or some various platform like that, I discovered that I was going to try and learn as much as I could to be able to help other people connect in ways that they never had before and were suddenly forced to. And so I helped nonprofits, I helped community members, the schools, teachers, kids, and even my elderly friends who barely ever really got onto a computer and an iPad to be able to connect with their grandkids or log into a local community meeting. And in recent times, in the last year and a half or so, I jumped in to learn more about presenting in this hybrid way or connecting in a hybrid way so that I could teach other people how to do it more effectively as well. And so through my work in the community primarily, as well as my work with Power Speaking, I am looking forward to having this conversation today and to hear about all of the wonderful insights that my colleagues here on the call have to share with you as well.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Amy. And how about you, Amy Riley?
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. I'm glad to be here and super proud to be a Power Speaking facilitator and coach. And I'm passionate about supporting leaders. And we all know that many, many leaders have been thrust into a new kind of environment recently, virtual or hybrid. So I have been working to support leaders inside of that. It's the topic I've been speaking on the most. How do we foster our culture in a hybrid world? And I do think that it takes courage to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there, to find new ways to connect with your team members and your colleagues. And I think it involves each leader finding their own way with their team or their group. And I'm here to support that.
Terrific. Yeah. And Amy, you're a great example of someone that's showing a great deal of flexibility. Amy has her own podcast and has a very sophisticated home office setup. It just so turns out she's traveling this week and is needing to improvise at a friend's house. And you're doing a remarkable job. So thank you for modeling how this works. So I'm going to start with a question, and then Brian, our moderator, if I could get your help, I see we've got some great input coming through chat. I'd like to then address some of the challenges that folks are posing. So thinking back to that matrix I shared at the outset, how do you, what criteria do you take into account when considering the question of place? Meaning, how do you determine when it's best to bring a group of people together in person? So often I'm seeing a lot of companies make what I think is kind of an arbitrary edict, which is, you work from home on Monday and Friday, you come into the office Tuesday through Thursday. And I don't know that that's necessarily the best approach. So share your thoughts on that subject, and what kinds of things should you take into account when making those really important decisions about when to bring people together versus when to provide that flexibility. Jenny, how about if you kick us off?
Absolutely. So for us, there's no defined workplace. And we have critical on-site employees that need to be on-site 24/7 that have been covering things for us for years at ADP. So for us, work happens where the employee is. It could be at home, in an office. It could be in traffic, waiting for a light to change. They could be anywhere in the world and in any time zone. So I think for us, what's needed with our teams are clear expectations for our associates, and that's what we call our employees, on what's expected of them. Are they expected to respond after this certain time? Are they expected to respond on the weekends? What channels are preferred by the team? What channels do we use in an emergency when we need to get a hold of an associate? So I think for us, it's looking at each team and what their shared goals are, the leaders sharing their expectations, and then what tools they're going to use to connect and collaborate. Like, for example, we use WebEx. That's a collaboration tool, but I think most teams would have guardrails on when and where to participate in those tools, and then the associates can follow those expectations.
Excellent. So key there, of course, is making sure that those expectations and guidelines are very clear. You brought up something that raises another question, and then I want to come back to this one because I know the Amy's have some advice they'd like to share as well. You mentioned naturally with a company of 60,000 associates, some, just given the nature of their work, need to be in the office. Others, given the nature of their work, are afforded more flexibility. What advice do you have for addressing the issue of fairness that often comes up in that regard?
Yeah, so a lot of times what we realize is we're dealing with humans, and a lot of times it's a case-by-case basis, because ultimately, at ADP, because you've been hired by them, we only hire the best, and you have to perform in your role. We have relentless support of our clients 24/7. So our clients and how we service them is cornerstone to everything that we do. So that being said, if you're not performing well, your flexibility is probably going to be limited. And I would also think an individual case-by-case basis, there might be accommodations that we need to make for that associate, because we are human. And there might be reasons why they need that additional flexibility for a smaller period of time or for a longer period of time. So we work with our HR teams and partners to look at that at a case-by-case basis, to have manager input on that, to make sure we're looking at it fairly. I think it's very tough to use a broad stroke across ADP, since there's so many different situations that are happening in the world, and the world is constantly changing.
Yeah. So really, first and foremost, it's driven by those decisions are driven by the nature of the work. That helps to determine what environment is going to be most effective to help that individual be successful. And to your point, depending on what's going on in that person's life, you may offer some flexibility.
Completely, because you want to make sure our client data is secure as well. So we
Yeah.
must follow those safety measures, not only for the associates' well-being and safety, but for the safety of our clients' data and what we're providing them.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. Amy, Riley? Should I just go with Riley and Ferber?
Sure.
How about you, Riley?
Okay. I love to hear Jenny say each team is figuring out their way case by case, because like you said, Carrie, when you kicked off this question, I think that there are a lot of organizations and a lot of senior leaders and executives that are pushing for that arbitrary or standard answer here. We're all going to be in the office 2 days a week or whatever it might be. And I get that. There's a lot of uncertainty going on, and we want to have something that's certain. But then I think that we're missing an opportunity that could be a silver lining outgrowth of our pandemic here, that we could choose. We could choose what's going to work best for the work and for the people, for the work to be done well and for people to be served and be able to operate in ways that play to their strengths and work to the tasks that are at hand. So I've been encouraging leaders, hey, look at the work and which environment is best going to serve the kind of creativity or interaction or focus or integration that's needed. Studies showed after our shutdown period of time, where everyone was thrust into virtual, teams that were working on familiar work, they did well. They figured out how to do it. They figured out how to connect. They did a really great job. Where we suffered was new initiatives, cross-functional work. So we could use that as starting guidance right there. If you're doing familiar work, have people stay in their homes or stay wherever they're most comfortable. If you're launching something new or it's a nuanced topic or you need to bring different perspectives together, then see if you can get everybody together in the in-person environment, right? If that cross-team functionality, also, if you want to celebrate, that can be fun to do in person. So just really thinking about the task at hand. For some folks, if they have that focused head down work, that's going to be best at home. But maybe not if there's young kids going on or there's a construction project going on next door. So really looking at what are the variables with your work and with your colleagues.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Ferber?
So cool. I suddenly upped my game in terms of coolness just because I'm going to go by my last name today. So thank you for that. One thing I would say to tag on to what Amy was saying was what was coming to mind for me, which is depending upon what the task is how we adjust for the need to come together. And I thought of a few things that came to mind for me. One is if it has been an extended time since we've been together. So as I mentioned, I work with community nonprofits as well as schools sometimes. And you can imagine that there are times when there are breaks, like the summertime or around holidays. Is there a purposeful time that we should come together after that break to reconnect? Because really, two of the other things that came to mind for me were, is there some kind of brainstorming or visioning that we need to do because it's the start of the calendar year or the start of the fiscal year, perhaps? Being together, whether it be on Zoom or face-to-face, would be really purposeful and goes back to what Amy was mentioning earlier, because there's a real reason for us to be all in the same space at that time. And then the third one is rapport building. So if there is an opportunity for all of us to come together, it is not arbitrary, it's very purposeful. We have new team members that have joined us in the last quarter or 6 months or a year that we haven't purposely come together to be able to connect with. And so I think between really being purposeful in terms of the visioning or brainstorming, after a pause or a longer period of time that we haven't come together. And then finally, that piece around rapport building, I think, is pretty key.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. I was totally listening. I was just looking at the chat as well. And your point is being underscored. The more specific we can be about the who and the why when deciding who comes into the office, the more efficient and effective the work will be. Yeah, really, really good point. Thank you, producer Brian. On that note, Brian, could you bring up some of the challenges that are coming through chat so we can talk about them?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have quite a few challenges here, but to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, they seem to kind of fall into the same couple of themes. And we've already touched on it, but it seems like the challenges that everybody is dealing with is that challenge of real connection and engagement when you're dealing with both modalities.
Excellent. And I saw someone say without making it feel forced. So let's dig into that. How do we build that genuine sense of camaraderie, connection, and overcome those feelings of almost disillusion or loneliness and feelings of disconnection that many feel? What advice do you have for that?
I can jump in here, Carrie. I think that we want to be encouraging every leader, and for every leader to be encouraging every member of the team to be inclusive, to look at their work, what voices, what perspectives are being included? How can you include other voices? How can you reach out in a meaningful way? How might that person want to be approached, and be able to say, you provide this kind of value. We need that value in this conversation or on this project. You always bring interesting views from this perspective. Let's hear it on this one. And connect and reach out and let folks provide value in new and interesting to them ways.
Great. So a lot of it is making sure, just as you would in a non-hybrid environment, is really understanding each individual and what's the most meaningful form of connection to them. Jenny, you want to build on that?
Absolutely. So I think in addition, people want to feel seen and heard and appreciated. So people join this call for a reason. You could have watched the webcast. You joined the live interaction for some type of connection in some type of meaningful way. So for me, and we all know what this feels like. We've all joined calls where we didn't know if people knew we were on the call or not, because maybe we're dialing into WebEx, we're dialing into a Microsoft Teams meeting. You're not sure if people actually even know you're present, and you're trying to feel present and feel engaged, but you have all these other things going on at home or things going on in the background, and you're trying to stay connected to the event as an attendee. Then you have leaders that are with people in person trying to connect with them, maybe forgetting about that virtual audience and not doing that engagement. So I think up front, you need to be really upfront about your goals for that meeting, how you expect people to participate and join, and modeling that behavior, but also making it an even playing field with everyone. If I'm doing something in person with the team that involves a game or something, and you're watching it online and you can't participate in the chat or in some way, you feel left out. Like, why was I here? So I saw you all having fun and I don't get to participate. And so we try to host events with themes that everyone can participate regardless of where they live in the world of their experiences. So usually we choose fun things like movies, or we choose fun things like traditions, where people have experiences to share and they can contribute in the fun. We try to choose trivia that's very fair to people. We don't just choose 80s music from the US. We try to choose topics that a lot of people can participate in. And then, that they can learn and contribute. Why are you inviting them to this meeting if they're just watching what you're doing? Could they have gotten the information in a different way and not felt left out? So we want to consider that too. And I see someone saying breakout rooms. I love that. Getting smaller groups together, bringing them back to a larger group to share in the learning. Great idea.
Excellent. And that gets to a point that someone brought up earlier about competing, competing screens, competing distractions. So ensuring that those expectations for the meeting are clear and making the meeting about actually making decisions, collaborating, not just providing updates. I think it's even more important in this hybrid environment that you think strategically about where asynchronous communication is most important. And if it's merely an update, do it asynchronously. Use that precious time in which you're coming together to actually collaborate, connect, innovate, make decisions, et cetera. Also, Jenny, I love that concept of a theme. That is one that everyone can identify with. And Ferber, I remember when we were chatting, you were saying that some of the leaders that you work with were pushing back a little bit on ensuring that there's a balance of more of that personal connection with the business at hand. Do you want to build on that?
Yeah. So I think that there is a challenge that we all face when working with leaders, or even if we are the ones leading the meeting, which is finding that balance between we're here to get work done in this meeting, and we're here also to create connections so that we can get the work done more effectively. And I just had a conversation yesterday with someone about this, where when we were all face-to-face, a lot of the rapport building and connection stuff happened on the walk to the meeting, when you ran into somebody picking up your coffee or your chai, and then you're walking for 5 minutes. Oh, the rain, it's been wild around here. And then you feel this immediate connection with the person. So when you sit down in the meeting, you can just jump right into the content, but it is different now. And so when I've worked with leaders around this, and even my self-led meetings, committing to at least the first 10 minutes of the meeting being about connection. How are you going to do that so that the people who are virtual, as well as the people who are face-to-face, can start to feel a connection with everyone in the meeting? And back to Jenny's point, I think it is really critical that you as the leader are purposeful for the folks that are at home. How are you going to make that happen for them? So if there's a game, or there's a, we're doing something related to trivia or some of those other wonderful ideas that Jenny was mentioning, it may be happening in the room, and it may be happening in a breakout room. And you as the facilitator are saying, we have 5 minutes to have this conversation, and then we're going to come back and we're first going to hear what the hybrid folks had to say about this. That is the biggest shift for me, is prioritizing the folks who are in the virtual space to help them understand that they are still super valuable to this conversation, and they aren't meant to be observers here. They're meant to be integrated into the meeting. And so the pushback, albeit I understand, right? We want to get the work done. I have seen time and again, the work gets done more effectively if we have that time at the beginning to connect.
Absolutely. I also like being really cognizant of leading with the virtual folks, because they're naturally going to feel less connected. So that's a way to try to level the playing field and ensure that they know from the outset that they're an equal part of the conversation. I also think there's an opportunity to lean into some of the advantages that the virtual participants have. They have the benefit of the platform tools. They have the benefit of, in the moment when someone's talking, adding a reaction. That's a little bit more difficult to do when you're in person. So I think highlighting those things as well is important. I want to share just a quick story that underscores the importance of what you're talking about, Ferber. We have a standing monthly leadership meeting that is typically really packed with dense business work we need to do. It's reviewing the financials, it's reviewing our strategic initiatives, where we have risk, et cetera. And one of the months in which we had this standing meeting, the day before, a tragic mass shooting occurred that was, it just rocked the nation, and it was very troublesome and concerning and on the minds of everyone. And I made the mistake of starting the meeting with business as usual. I just dove right into our agenda, and it was unusually flat. There wasn't as much engagement, not nearly as much participation. And my wrong, I didn't until near the end of the meeting acknowledge, gosh, I'm not feeling a real sense of connection and engagement. And I want to credit our president, Mary McGlynn, who's joining us today, for saying, I don't know about the rest of you, but it's really, really hard for me to focus on this given what happened yesterday. And we ended up going 30 minutes over because everyone needed to talk about how they were feeling about the situation. To your point, Amy, that would have happened naturally if we were in person. When people were starting to gather, the conversation would come up organically, and we would spend whatever amount of time is needed before diving into the business at hand. So it's just so much more important to be much more thoughtful and purposeful about inviting that conversation that has to happen before any kind of business can get done in that particular situation. Brian, what else do you see coming through? I love the engagement of this group.
Yeah, I think Hannah brought up an interesting point, and I don't know. I know Amy, you've done a lot of research. Amy Riley, you've done a lot of research on this too. I'm sure everybody has, but she's saying she's coming up against a challenge of companies asking for data or proof that proves that there is a positive shift in productivity being in person. And what are the arguments for? So what are the arguments for having a hybrid environment where some people are virtual and some people are in person?
Anyone have thoughts on that? Brian, go ahead, Amy, and then go ahead.
Okay. I have thoughts. I don't have data. That is not a super strength of mine, remembering numbers from studies. But I'm working with an organization, a tech company, that is trying to get people to come together in person for certain kinds of events and interactions. And what they're doing is, at the end of the event, when people are saying, oh my gosh, that was so great, I got to connect with so-and-so. Oh, I learned about what was going on in this other group, and that's going to be really important for our product development. They record those testimonials. They send out surveys immediately after those in-person events. And so they're gathering that data and they're gathering those testimonials. So the next time that they're planning an in-person event and they're communicating about that, they can share out with employees, here's what your colleagues thought about our last event like this, to let folks know what's possible, because we forget. Mm-hmm. We forget. We're getting into, if we're mostly working from home, we're getting into the advantages of working from home. And we can quickly get out of touch with what are the advantages to the other environment.
Wonderful. Thank you for adding that, Amy. I'd also like to address a question that came up from David Goad, and then we'll go to a few others. Something I've missed most about in-person collaboration were the accidental or impromptu chats in the hallway or cafeteria, especially with senior executives that are hard to schedule a chat with. Have you been able to foster that kind of casual conversation and relationship building in the new hybrid environment? Jenny, this has to be something you deal with.
Definitely. And I think for us, and I saw Tila Jackson's on. She is the most connected HR leader in Atlanta, Georgia, by the way. So we're really lucky to have her here. So if you're not connected with Tila on LinkedIn, I would tell you to do that. And she's I've learned so many great best practices from her, but we all want to build trust. We want to build trust with each other. We want to build trust with our teams. We want to build trust with our leaders. That's going to lead to better communications across our organizations and teams. And we're investing in our career when we're building those relationships. Everything is about who you know to get to that next level, lift as you climb, all of that great advice. So when I look for connection, and I look for people who are naturally doing it. So if I want to connect to more leaders across ADP, I wouldn't look for some random thing like who's online, who's doing this, are they available or not, are they green or red on WebEx? I'm going to look for the people that naturally like to network online. I know they're probably more apt to want to connect with me. And they could be introverted and just putting on a show online, but they're still looking for connection. They're not posting to LinkedIn so no one will see their post. They're posting to LinkedIn because they're looking for connection. And so I look for those connectors in the companies or organizations of people I want to meet. And then I take a moment and write a thoughtful message to them in a channel where they can see I'm also an employee. I'm also an ADP associate. I saw your post on LinkedIn, Carrie. It's amazing what you're doing with Power Speaking Live. Would love to connect with you. I saw this post on LinkedIn, so they know where it's coming from. You're not stalking them. You're not researching them in Google. That you saw it from a public post that they created. And I wanted to connect with you, Carrie, about this because I would love to learn more about this aspect of communications from you. I've never had somebody say no to that. I've had somebody say, hey, get with my admin. I'll speak to you in a couple weeks. Oh my gosh, you made my day. I didn't think anybody even saw that post. That means so much to me. The reaction's always been positive because it builds connection and trust right away and how you connect with them. And then you can learn more about their role in a way that's beyond just a, hey, how's the weather? Oh, it's raining. Who are you cheering for in the playoffs? Beyond that little small talk conversation to meaningful things that you could actually learn about them. So I strive for a one-on-one connection with those folks.
I think that is excellent advice. Amy?
I was just going to say, one of the workshops that we teach, Confident Speaking for Women, what you just said, Jenny, would be such a great example to support what we are teaching in that class, which is if you're working to connect with people, have a reason to do it. And this is really what we're talking about today. Have a reason to meet, have a reason to come together in whatever format that is. But I just wanted to highlight what you said, and I love it, which is not only is there a purpose and a reason to connect with that person, but you're also complimenting them at the beginning. I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but if somebody wrote me an email and said, Amy, I just loved, XYZ thing that I saw you on, and I was hoping that you could give me a little bit of advice because I'd like to be able to do that someday, I would probably be okay with responding in a positive way to that connection. So I think we need to let go a little bit of the nervousness or anxiety that we may feel about connecting with folks that are in a higher position than we are in, and just realize that people are out there wanting to help, wanting to connect as much as we are.
Absolutely. And I think the key point that we're conveying here is, in large part, it's on the individual. It's up to each individual to be very intentional and proactive about trying to make those connections. And it has to be even more intentional in this hybrid type environment. And I think especially about young professionals whose career is starting remotely, where they don't have the benefit of that face time with leaders to really build those relationships. So I think we can't just assume that young professionals are going to know how to do this. I think we need to give them a playbook, give them the strategies and approaches, and certainly have an expectation for leaders too, to make sure that part of the onboarding process is reaching out, making those connections, and help to make them feel very welcome and part of the organization. Okay, great. So I want to, oh my goodness. We made the decision to move these events from an hour to 45 minutes, and I'm now disappointed that we did that. I can't believe there's only 3 minutes left. Oh my gosh. And thank you so much to everyone that contributed. I should stress that we follow this up with a blog. So we'll be including a lot more advice and best practice approaches in the blog, which is available to all of our subscribers. Let's close by giving each of you the opportunity to share your parting advice as it relates to hybrid communication and connection. What do you want to leave your audience with?
I can start. I would say take risks. Try new things. We're always innovating. Our team is so creative. We have idea storms. We get together and one idea leads to a better idea, leads to even better idea. We tried lots of things like putting up screens so the chat is running live for the execs on the stage. So they actually can see the chat and make comments to it, and they loved it. So I had a lot of pushback from people. It's too busy. They won't like it. They actually like it. It keeps them engaged too, because they can see how people are reacting to what they're saying in real time. But you're going to try things and fail. Our internal communications team, we try things all the time. It didn't land like we thought. Guess what? We're all still working and moving forward, and we learned from it. And it might be better for a different type of event or a different purpose. So I would give yourself some grace. We've all been through a lot for the last few years. You're here. You invested your time in yourself to hear this insights and to come join us today. But walk away giving yourself a little bit of grace and knowing that your ideas may not land or they may soar, and just have some fun with it. Think about what you would want if you showed up to the meeting, to have a little bit more fun and engagement from everyone, wherever they are in the world.
Experiment and have fun. Love it. Which Amy would like to go next?
I can go. Because I also teach presentation skills, I would say if you have the opportunity to present in a hybrid format, to remember a couple of things. One is to always practice in the space that you're going to be presenting in, and make sure that you have someone in the virtual environment that is your partner in that experience. Amy Riley and I had the opportunity to do this recently at a Power Speaking meeting that we were participating in. And it makes a huge difference to feel like you have support in the other space. So whether you are in the face-to-face room or you're in your home office, make sure you have someone else in the other space that is on your team, because it can help reduce a lot of that stress knowing what's going on in that other environment. And so I really encourage you to think about that as you are either leading meetings or presenting in one of those environments.
Essential. Riley, bring us home.
I'll piggyback on that. Amy and I have been working together to put together updated content for a Power Speaking module in our presentation skills course. And something that we're being really intentional about is telling folks when it's time to present in a hybrid environment. There might be a lot of things that you can't control. Sometimes there are internet bandwidth issues. Sometimes there's background noise as someone's blowing leaves next door. Maybe you can't move the cameras, right? They're bolted to the ceiling from the way it was set up before. One thing you can always control is how clear your instructions are for interaction. Let virtual audience members know when you have a question. Please use the reactions button and electronically raise your hand. My partner, Amy Ferber, will be on the lookout for those raised hands. In the room, please physically raise your hand, and I'll make a note when you have a question. Be really clear about what those instructions are for both audiences, and don't ever let one segment of your audience feel like the secondary audience.
Great. Wonderful advice. There's been a lot of themes. I want to thank you very, very much for your participation and sharing your insights. Also, if you didn't notice, Jenny dropped a really, really valuable resource in chat from the ADP Research Institute. So grab that if you haven't already. And thank you. Thank you all for your participation. Again, we'll be sharing more in our upcoming blog. And in closing, we're going to show a slide that features next month's Power Speaking Live event. Next month, we will be talking about the art and power of storytelling, how stories can be used to connect and move people to action, both in a business environment and within communities. Thank you all.